My retirement planning spreadsheet has been reset to its default values. For this scenario, we'll assume that we will not be participating in any defined benefit pension plans, nor will we be worried about accumulating a personal retirement savings nest egg. We will strictly be focusing on getting our retirement funds from a Social Security program. To begin, we'll set up some values. We'll say our date of birth is 1980. We'll start our working career at the age of 25. We'll live to the age of 100, have a long life, and we'll take the latest retirement age we can get from Social Security, which is 70 years. That'll give us the highest benefit. Note that at this point, the spreadsheet predicts that the Social Security system would need to accumulate about 40% of our gross earnings in order to fund a retirement for someone retiring at 70 and living to be 100. Let's assume that the full Social Security benefit in 2025, based upon someone who retired at 70 years old, let's suppose that this was about $3,000, which is fairly close to accurate. Next, we'll make an allowance for annual inflation during our working career. Let's say it's going to run about 3%. That happens to be historically accurate for the last 50 years. And let's assume that during the period of time that we're covered by Social Security, there is a Social Security cost of living adjustment made every year. And I'm going to assume that that's the same as the inflation rate, so 3% here. Accordingly, the spreadsheet predicts that full Social Security benefits, which were $3,000 in 2025, would be paid in 2050, the day we start retirement, at a rate of $6,281 a month, and that's based on a 3% cost of living adjustment. Now we can use the Social Security benefit paid in 2025 to compute the equivalent of a fund needed by the government to fund the retirement of Social Security. In other words, we can determine the size of the Social Security nest egg that each recipient would need. To do this, we're going to assume that the benefit from Social Security will be zero, but we'll plug in up here $3,000, the same amount. That would equal the monthly income we needed when we retired in $25. Notice that the monthly amount being withdrawn is the same that we had before, $62.81. Accordingly, needing to draw $62.81 out of the Social Security nest egg account, assuming that annual inflation is 3%, and that Social Security had provided us a 3% cost of living adjustment as we went along, well then we would need a Social Security nest egg of approximately $2,261,000. We can reconfirm this using the Windows calculator. If our benefit's going to be $62.81 when we retire and only getting Social Security, again, starting off with was $3,000 a month cost of living, brought it to $20.50 to $62.81. Well, we'll go back here and we'll do $62.81 times 12 times, and we're going to be living for 30 years in retirement. 30. Well, that gives us 2,261,000 and change, virtually what was predicted by the spreadsheet. Looking at it a different way, we're going to have worked for 45 years, retired for 30, and then if you look at it from the working years perspective, we would need to set aside $41.88 per month for every one of those 45 years in order to fund the Social Security nest egg needed to support us. Let's confirm that. So we'll take 4188 times 12 times 45 years gives us 2,261,000 and change. So you can think of it as taking the full Social Security benefit and taking it out linearly. For the retirement years, you'll need 2.261 million saved for you, or what would have been contributed from your salary to fund the Social Security nest egg. Now, the current scenario is based on the assumption that the individual lives to 100. That's pretty optimistic. It turns out in the United States, the average age of death is just under 80 years old. So we'll change this to 80 years. Notice how drastically it reduced the amount of funds that need to be accumulated in order to fund the nest egg that Social Security would cover. And the reduction is primarily due to the fact that this time we're only going to live 10 years after we retire instead of 30 as in the previous discussion.